All right, everyone, how are we doing? It's Matt here. It's the Vinyl Head UK channel, and it's vinyl appreciation time once again. Are you ready? Are you ready for another one? I hope you are. Now, on the channel, obviously, I cover a lot of very well-known bands. We've looked at Metallica and Maiden and Sabbath and Aerosmith and a whole bunch of others. But I think it's important to cover the bands that maybe you're not so familiar with. I like a whole range of music. Obviously, you can tell rock and metal is my primary favourite genres of music. I've mentioned I love country and blues and stuff before. So I think it's important to cover a range of big and small artists across the board. But mainly for me, I like to cover bands and music that I enjoy. You know, like I say, it's quite an eclectic mix of styles and genres. I don't just pigeonhole myself into thrash or death or country or whatever, you know. So today I have a band that I discovered a while back through a different YouTube channel. I can't remember whose channel it was. But I think that's interesting how we discover bands now. You know, I've discovered a few bands through YouTube channels. It's very different than back in the day with the old tape trading or, you know, seeing an artwork you like and pick up that record. So different way to discover bands, definitely through YouTube channels. Hopefully, maybe there's some bands through this YouTube channel that I've covered that maybe you've discovered and took a liking to. But I discovered this band through a YouTube channel. I went and had a listen online some of their stuff, and I loved it. I was blown away. I really loved it. The most European sounding American band. I was very surprised when I listened to this band to discover they were American, but I'll come on to a little bit more about that later. But I picked up their second release, a release that came out in 2012. Let me introduce you to it. So right here, I have Black Breath, Sentenced to Life. As I say, the second record of theirs, put out in 2012. I think that's quite an interesting title, Sentenced to Life. Obviously, we hear Sentenced to Death. I've expressed my like for lyrics and artwork, how you can perceive it as how you want, you know. Lyrics to someone might mean something that to someone else they're completely different. It's your own interpretation, and I think that's the same with the artwork. But I think this title of this record has a lot of interpretation as well. So, you know, does it mean you're sentenced to life in prison? Or, you know, usually we hear sentenced to death. Could it be the opposite? Sentenced to life. You have a chance to live. Your sentence is to live life. I think that's really interesting. Something you can look into a little bit and perceive it how you want. I think that's the beauty of stuff like this. But yes, this is the second release by Black Breath. This record itself was released in 2012. This is a 2012 pressing. It was put out by Southern Lord Records, which is an interesting one. Southern Lord Records, for those that don't know, it was put together by the guys in Sun. It's usually associated with bands like Sun or Earth or Boris, bands like that, sort of the noise, sort of, I guess, avant-garde, sort of experimental sounding bands, which Black Breath aren't. They're very much a different sound to those type of bands. Southern Lord isn't just for bands, obviously, like Sun and Earth and Boris and that, but, you know, looking at like the roster of artists, that's the sort of main sort of sound maybe associated with that. There's been other stuff, Probot, which was Dave Grohl's sort of, do you call it a supergroup? I don't know. His project that he did with a numerous amount of metal legends that he did a good few years back. That was put out on Southern Lord, from what I remember. But yeah, Black Breath, they were formed back in 2006 in Bellingham, which is in Washington State. Now, as I say, this band, when I put them on and listen to them, they sound like Entombed or Dismember in the sense that they've got that fuzzy guitar tone. They aren't, I would describe them as they're not like a purely sort of that old school death metal sound. There's a crusty punk, crusty hardcore sound to them. They've got elements of thrash. There's a little tinge of black metal, I think, in this. And obviously big chunks of death metal in there as well. But yeah, in terms of that guitar tone, with that fuzz, I forget what the like actual term for it is, what the pedal's called, but that Entombed Dismember guitar tone, you know, that real dirty fuzz. I love that tone. Like, listen to Entombed the first time and hearing that guitar tone, and oh my god, I wish I could go back to that moment and hear it again for the first time. Loved it. And that's what you get on this Black Breath record. The same, I've listened to the previous record as well. I haven't so much listened to the one after, so I think they've only done 3 full lengths. I might be wrong there, but I think it's 3 full lengths. And yeah, the first 2 I've listened to a fair bit, not so much the third one. But the first 2 definitely have that sort of Entombed, Dismember style guitar tone to them. So let's have a little look. Talked about the album title. Let's look at the artwork. So we have not much going on. A gloved hand with a sledgehammer cracking some glass there, which is quite cool. Makes it feel like he's cracked the front of the sleeve there. Not much going on. Don't know if it really has much to do with the album title there, really, but there we go. Logo on the back and a kind of darkened silhouette picture of the band right there. Track listing, got Some Lord down on the corner there. So it's not my favourite bit of artwork that I've seen on a metal record, but there we go. The inner sleeve is exactly the same, minus the Black Breath logo, that gloved hand with the sledgehammer. And then on the back, we have lyrics. Some very small pictures of a band right down the bottom. Very, very small. And all your production notes. Very small little who's who in the band as well. So there we go, and then once again it's black vinyl, because all of my records are black vinyl. Side 1, so we have our title of the album, the band logo, and then that cracked feel again. You can see the same on the flip side, on side B. And that is our artwork right there. It's kind of a card inner sleeve rather than a paper one, so you kind of have to be a little bit careful. I've got a few like that where it's more that, I don't know what the material proper name is, but that more plasticky inner sleeve there rather than paper. So it does get a little bit of debris. Give that record a good clean when you're about to play it, just so it doesn't get into your grooves and stylus and start damaging and scratching the record itself. So track listing. Let's go through that as I've got it right in front of me here. So 1, Feast of the Damned, Sentenced to Life, Forced into Possession, Home of the Grave, and Endless Corpse. And then side 2, Mother Abyss, Of Flesh, Doomed, The Flame, and Obey. Now, who is the band? I'm going to read it out. I don't know their names off by heart, so I'm going to have to read it off the back of here, okay? So, vocals is Neil McAdams. On guitar, we have Eric Wallace and Zack Muljat. Hope I've got that right. Elijah Nelson on bass. Now, Elijah unfortunately passed away in 2019. So sadly no longer with us. And then Jamie Byrum on the drums. Now, this is a band that it's kind of hard to gauge. There's not masses of information out there. Their social media is pretty much dead. There's not really anything going on there. Obviously, I feel that the death of Elijah Nelson played a part in this, maybe a band in mourning. But there's not a lot of information out there. The website's very dated. The social media pages are quite dated. So I'm not really sure whether this band is still going or not. I'd like them still to be going. It's a band very much I'd like to go see live. But yes, from the sound of it, it sounds like, you know, they've gone through some very sad events in the last couple of years or so, losing a member of a band there. This was produced by Kurt Ballou from Converge, who I think did, he did the first record as well. They recorded it over at his own studios, but he is producer on this, and I think he does a magnificent job, might I add, on the production on this record. So let's go through some of the tracks. It's a short record. Before you know it, it's done. Blink and you'll miss it. It's about 33 minutes in length, so it's not a long record. But let me tell you, it's phenomenal. It's such a good record. I'm trying to hold my excitement in. I've been very sort of mellow, but now it's going to burst out me. This is such a good record. There's not a weak moment on it. There's quite a mixture of different things going on, but my word, riffs. They are riffs for days on this thing. So many great riffs. As I say, Kurt Ballou's done such a great job on the production. You've got these like chainsaw riffing. You've got some solos coming through. Got a lovely bass tone. You can hear that bass sitting under the guitars the whole way through. The bass doesn't disappear in. Drums are really nice as well. Great sounding drums. The vocals don't sit too high, but they sit high enough that they just sit above the music itself. They don't shoot out of the speakers all that much, but just enough that it sits above, but doesn't overpower what is going on, because there's a lot of really important stuff going on underneath the vocals. As I say, there's riffs for days in this record. It's so good. When I went to buy, I mean, like I say, I'd listen to bits. When I listen to a new band, how do I explain this? When I listen to a new band, I won't listen to the whole album. I will listen to little snippets of certain tracks, say on Apple, for example, just to get a basic idea of whether it's something I'm gonna like. And then if I go and buy the record, I want that record, like putting it on the vinyl, and put it on the record player. I want that to be the first experience of hearing this album from start to finish. I don't want it spoilt beforehand, because I've said about this before, it tells a journey when you listen to it from start to finish. And if it's coming through, you know, if it's played on vinyl, it's going to sound even better, and that journey through is going to be even better. So I listen to little snippets. But then the first proper time is when I get this, I put it on my record player and I go, okay, let's go. Let's see what you've got. And when this arrived, I put it on, and the word that kept coming out my mouth when I was sat there listening was wow. Like wow, 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 wow. All the way through the riffs, the breakdowns, through the vocals, the bass tone. I just kept saying, wow, it's such a good record. Again, from the first record that I've heard, it sounds like they've developed into a more mature sound, a more mature style. The songwriting sounds better to me. But that's just based, again, on little snippets from the first record. I'm going to have to get the first and the third record, get it on vinyl, and add to this collection of Black Breath. But yeah, let's go through some of the tracks. So, Feast of the Damned kicks us off. It's got this sort of weird, sort of reverse, but not reverse sounding riff. it sounds like it's kind of played backwards, but not at the same time. That is our sort of intro in, and then pow, we are literally straight in with this kind of old school deathy vibey riff. You know, real, I said about Entombed and Dismember, let's not just stop at those bands, you know, Obituary and bands like that, old school death style, real great riff that you can bang your head to. It's sort of a kind of a mid-tempo-y sounding riff. Later on, you know, I said this record is kind of a mix of sort of death metal and a bit of thrash, but then also that crusty hardcore and crusty punk vibe to it. Later on in this track, we hear some, coming after the solo, we hear these sort of hardcore style vocals, and then gang vocals. Gang vocals feature kind of throughout this a fair bit. We get that sort of, like I say, that crusty hardcore feel to it coming in later on in the track, which is quite nice. Sentenced to Life, the next track, is to me, a pure hardcore sort of punky crust track completely. It comes away a little bit from, it's still metal sounding, but it's more of a hardcore punk sound to it. You can hear the influence of bands, you know, that sort of style coming through into the music, like Cro-Mags, bands like that. You can hear that sound to it. But again, a solid, just riffs. I'm going to keep saying so many great riffs. What else have we got? Home of the Grave. Probably the most groovy track on this. There's a lot of groove in the riffs that you can hear right there. Especially on the chorus. There's this huge groove-filled riff on the chorus. I love it. You know, it's one of those moments where I sat there again and was like, wow, this is great. I really, really digging this. Endless Corpse. This is the last track on side A. It opens with these sort of haunting notes on the guitar, which for me kind of reminded me of 28 Days Later or 28 Weeks Later, whichever one. The style and the way he plays it and the actual notes, it had this haunting 28 Days Later. If you've seen that film, you kind of hopefully get what I mean on that. But it kind of haunts through. And he keeps coming back to these notes. You know, you hear it at the start and then they come and filter back in later on throughout the song. They slow the pace down later on in this track. You know, we start off with these notes before it goes into quite a thrashy sound, but they do slow this pace down. There's a few moments on this record where the pace is slowed down. Which just makes it sound huge, massive, massive, huge sound. They slow it again back down towards the end. They go into a solo, and then slow it down again, and their riff is so crusty sound, and it's untrue. It's amazing. But it's definitely, they bring the pace down as we close off the start of side A. When we go on to side B, you put that needle down and you need to back off them speakers because it comes through like 100 miles an hour. The start of Mother Abyss, man, it hits you in the face so much for start of this track. He's got his really nice lead coming off straight away into the track. There's a bit where they do the chokes on the cymbals and dun 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 dun, and it reminds me of Earth Rot by Bloodbath, where they go human Earth Rot, that bit. I don't know if that's a direct influence or something they heard and sounded cool, but it just completely reminded me of Earth Rot on that bit by Bloodbath. And then he has this is gonna be weird to describe, but he has this kind of corpse grinder way of delivering his vocals. Now, not by how he sounds. I'm not saying that the vocalist here sounds like Corpse Grinder with the real death growls, but just the phrasing more than anything on the verses, the way that Corpse Grinder phrases his delivery, I can hear that in the way that this vocalist delivers his vocal lines with the phrasing there. As I say, he doesn't sound like Corpse Grinder in terms of those deep, guttural, death vocals, but you can definitely hear a kind of influence on how he delivers those lines, which is quite interesting. There's this very small break as well, where the bass just plays for literally like 2 seconds, but the tone, the dirtiness of the tone on this bass, wow, I love it. It's, you know, you hear this like dirty, fuzzy tone on the guitars themselves, but that bass, just for like those 2 seconds where he plays that little, almost like a fill, so nice, such a nice bass tone, really beautiful bass tone. As I say, so dirty, but this track is amazing. It's probably one of my favorites. They are all short tracks, as I say. Remember I said it's 33 minutes long, so these tracks are, you know, they're flying off. They are absolutely flying off. Of Flesh, we go back to slowing the pace down, and we slow that tempo down of this one. We pick up the pace a little bit again in this. We actually go into some blast beats, which is quite nice to hear. You know, don't hear that in sort of hardcore punk, so we still have that death metal element to it. Going into Doomed, the only thing that I could, there's lots I could think of during Doom, but as I'm sat there listening to it, the main thing going on in my head was, this would make a great Circle Pit song. You know, I was just thinking, hearing this live, all I can imagine is just going into Circle Pit. Perfect song for it. It's all I could think, just imagining, like, shut my eyes and just imagining that pit and the soundtrack to that pit with this track right there, which is, you know, maybe that's just me longing to get back to live music or what, but just sounded like the perfect Circle Pit song to me. The Flame, this is a track, so we take the tempo down again, but we remain at a slower tempo throughout. A lot of the tracks that do knock down the tempo pick it up again later on and build that tempo back up, whereas this stays at slow tempo throughout. It's definitely a track that reminded me in parts of Slayer when they turn the tempo down. You know, not Slayer when they're like going 100 miles an hour through most of Rain in Blood or whatever. But stuff like Scenes of the Abyss where they slowed it down. That's kind of what I felt like on this track. You could hear that Slayer influence. It sounds huge. It sounds massive. There's this big, slow in your face riff later on, and the vocalist lets out this scream that starts on the back end of his passage. The instruments stop. We carry on that scream, and then that big slow riff comes back in, but that scream is still going, and his scream goes on and on and on, and it sounds huge. It fades out a bit towards the end and just lets that instrumentation swallow it up. But it's so impressive to hear it and just carrying it on, and then that riff, it's slow, it's massive, it's dirty. You just nod your head, bang your head. And again, I sat there and went, wow, this is so good. And then we wrap up the album with Obey. And again, I hear a slightly different style on this one. I hear a bit of Melodeath influence. I hear some In Flames and At the Gates influences in this one. It's probably the track that, which is a shame really, it's probably a track that didn't catch me as much as the other tracks. That's not to say it's bad. It's still a solid track, but it didn't quite catch me. Maybe because I was still on the high from The Flame before. You know, I think The Flame maybe should have ended it with that big slow riff. What a way to end a record. But Obey just didn't quite catch me as much as some of the other tracks, which is odd because I love Melodeath. It's not an out-and-out Melodeath track, but you can hear, you know, at the gates, influence is in it, definitely. But that rounds off the album for us. And, wow. I'm going to keep saying it. That's all I can think of. It's so good. The second album by Black Breath, Sentenced to Life. Maybe you haven't heard of this band, but hopefully after this, it's something that you're going to go and check out. Get this vinyl. Go and listen to this record, because it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's in your face. It's quick. Before you know it, it's done, and you want to put it straight back on and listen to it 6 times in a row. It's well worth it, trust me. So good, so good. So, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Let's build this channel up more and more. Go and smash that like button. Go and hit the bell for all notifications. Don't forget as well, social media, Instagram and Twitter, at VinylHeadUK. Go and give those a follow as well. Build up all of this brand. Build up the YouTube and the social media. I'll be back. Plenty more material, plenty more records, plenty more content coming up for you guys. Go and buy vinyl, go and buy this vinyl, go and listen to this vinyl, and plenty of other vinyls. Stay safe, I'll catch you later. Until next time, enjoy.